It is another edition of the On the Mic podcast. And already, I mean, outside of his cage performances, but first time on the show, undefeated, right outside the top five, coming off a huge win at Bellator 283. And even before we started this show, find out he's a football fan. So already one of my favorite fighters, and probably your favorite fighter, Dalton Rosta. Dalton, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Especially doing this so early in the morning. I appreciate you doing that. Man, huge win for you at Bellator 283 over Romero Cotton. And first and foremost, like we could break down the fight, and you're going to be asked the same 5 questions every single time when you talk about this performance. But for me, continuing on in your career, adding another W, another ranked W, and doing it in the way you did it against somebody who was talking so much, is this your most satisfying win to date?
I would have to say so, yeah. Just because of all the things that he was saying beforehand, pre-fight media during fight week, interviews leading up to the fight. You know, I watch all that stuff. I try to dig into my opponents, any footage that's available, anything that they're saying that's available, you know, I try to take advantage of. And I got to watch all that stuff, and he was talking a lot, you know what I mean? You know, saying I was going to quit, saying that I wasn't on his level, saying he was going to knock me out, he's going to finish me. He's going to wrestle the shit out of me, all this other stuff. So I stuffed all his takedowns. He didn't wrestle the shit out of me. You know, obviously he didn't knock me out. Obviously I didn't quit. And then he got knocked out. So everything he said, I proved wrong.
I'm very curious. I heard you say this post-fight that, you know, in your post-fight press conference that you did listen to this stuff. I'm very curious, with someone who's so successful as you are and being young like you are, why is it important for you? And do you think it'll always remain this way, that you dig into your opponent, you listen to their stuff? Do you ever get worried that you might be digging too much?
No, you know, especially with this fight, with all the shit he was talking, and with us supposed to fight on 4 separate occasions, that being the 4th one, I was very curious as to what he was saying in the first place. But during fight week, there's not much to do. You're cooped up in a hotel room. You know, if you got your roommates, your teammates there, you guys can go out and do stuff after you work out. But I mean, most of the time you're just resting. So whenever I'm in the hotel room, you know, I'm watching this stuff. I want to hear what they're saying. I want to see if they're giving a game plan away. You know, if there's a lot of time that reporters ask game plans, and a lot of the time fighters like, oh, I can't tell you everything, but we're doing this and this. You know, even I'm guilty of it. So I took advantage of those opportunities. The film's there. What he's saying is there. You know, he said he was going to wrestle shit out of me. So obviously I knew he was going to wrestle me. He could be, you know, saying that, you know, pulling a snake eye, you know, looking here, throwing there type of deal with what he's saying. He could be saying one thing and doing the opposite. So I was expecting that as well. But, you know, he seemed very genuine with what he was saying. And I was hoping for that. You know what I mean? He gave his game plan away a little bit, and I think it worked to my advantage.
Yeah, I would say it worked to your advantage. I do love that, though, especially kind of your mindset of digging into your opponent, because I do agree, especially, you know, where you're at this point in your career. It's not like you're doing 25,000 media interviews and everything like that. And it's funny, like, that you say, oh, you know, he was being pretty genuine. It's kind of hard not to realize someone's being genuine when they're saying all these things they're going to do to you, while also saying how they're going to do it, right? Like, I'm not going to say I'm going to knock you out and then say, oh, I'm just going to lay on you for 5 or 15 minutes. Like, it wouldn't match up. So I do like that. But with that being said, and, you know, I'm not a quote unquote reporter who's going to ask those game plan questions. That's kind of never been my thing. But for me, I do care about kind of opening up to the audience who I'm talking to and who this fighter is, and what makes them who they are. And with that being said, when you talk about mental warfare, obviously don't need to talk about other promotions. I'm sure I can name 20 guys off of Bellator, but the biggest one that comes in mind is the biggest star in the sport, and that's Conor McGregor. Mental warfare is everything to a guy like that. For you, how important is it to mentally check your opponent and emotionally check your opponent just as much as it is technically and skill-wise inside the cage?
I think it's very important. You know, I think I still would have got the same outcome this fight regardless, but you know, I like testing the waters, see where they're at. Are they nervous? What reactions are they giving? And with him, this fight, I seen him leaving the ballroom as I was going in where we were doing the COVID testing and our workout rooms said something to him. Then we got into a little argument going back and forth. Saw him on the elevator on the way to the venue, said something to him there. He wouldn't look at me, and then at weigh-ins, obviously a lot of people seen the weigh-ins. I was talking to him a little at weigh-ins. We were talking back and forth, and he was giving off nervous energy, and I said that to him. I said, you seem nervous. And he's like, he's like, maybe a little bit, that was probably him trying to think he was playing mind games with me. But at the end of the day, I think there's a little bit of honesty in that statement. And he was like, aren't you? And I said, it's too late to be afraid. And, there was some stuff said back and forth after that. I couldn't hear what he was saying. So I told him to speak up with some, harsh language in there. And and then I accidentally nudged him a little bit during whenever we turned the flex, and he started pushing me hard, and he couldn't really move me, and he looked genuinely pissed off. So, I mean, at that point, 100%, I knew I was in his head. And then, like I said, I seen him in the elevator on the way to the venue from the hotel on fight day. And I said something to him, and he wouldn't look at me. He said something back, but he still wouldn't look at me. So I knew 100% I was in his head. And whenever we got in the cage as well, whenever I was staring at him across the cage, he wasn't making eye contact with me. If it was his first split second. And at that point, if you listen to Mike Tyson talk about it, it's he says, at that point when he looked away for a split second, I knew I had him. I felt the same way.
I got to tell you, and I never get this personal with fighters, but I was watching Bellator 283 with my uncle, trying to get him reinvested into the sport and everything. You had that man jumping out of his seat, going crazy for just the excitement of how your fight went, and kind of giving the backstory of, just kind of the fight week lead up, between the both of you and the several cancellations, the storyline, the script wrote itself. For you, was there a moment inside the cage? Because I can the reason I bring that up is just kind of talking from a casual fan standpoint. I mean, you kind of knew as the fight progressed, you were in the driver's seat with only one seat, no passengers allowed. You were just going 100 miles per hour down the highway. Was there a moment, whether it was stuffing all the takedowns or you clipped them, was there one specific moment where you're like, this fight's mine, I got it? Yeah.
First combination, when I landed 2 flush shots, there was apparent speed difference. I was expecting him to be quicker because he's an athlete, but I think I proved time and time again I'm usually faster than all my opponents. Not usually, I have been, and I feel like I'm one of the fastest fighters in the weight class. And on top of that, I was being reserved with my combinations because I knew he was going to shoot. But even whenever some of the ones I was committing on and he got in deep on my legs and I was still defending the takedowns, I was like, yeah, this is going to be a good night. Great night.
It was a great night. I was going to say it was a great night for you. And man, it would be dumb of me to not bring up, you're rocking the shirt right now. You've had all your professional fights under the Bellator MMA banner. And we can have the debate forever about promotion against promotions all over the world, but you are someone who I love following the career of. And I know Bellator loves having you because you're one of those guys that they can say, he started with us and both of us, we're going to rise to the top together. For you, what has this been like being with Bellator since the beginning of your professional career? And how do you think you've come along, through their system?
It was a great opportunity at first. And I was straight out of college. I was working a job at Northwestern Mutual where there's potential 6-figure income. And I left my job to make a guaranteed $4,000 in my first fight, and everybody was calling me crazy, but it was what I wanted to do, and Bellator being in the position it is, being a global company, being the second biggest promotion in the world, I had to take advantage of the opportunity. It's exactly what I wanted to do. And, being given that opportunity was awesome. And, I think it paid off for both sides so far. I'm 7 fights in, I'm 7-0. there was like last year, I only got to fight once because of injuries. And before that, you know, they weren't really keeping me active, but I stressed that to them in my negotiations, in my contract negotiations. I stressed that to them. I wanted to be more active. And then after my fight with Tony Johnson, they actually offered me a fight like 3 weeks later. And then I had to turn it down because my ankle was messed up from the fight, and I was having some issues with my hamstring, which I thought was my hamstring at the time. It turned out to be my lower back. I herniated a couple discs and it ended up spreading worse down my leg, like as I kept training. And so then they offered me another one in August, and it was at like the end of May, like after they offered me to fight in May, that like I found out it was my lower back because it kept getting worse. And I went and got checked out, and it was my lower back, and I had to take time off. So when they offered me the one in August, you know, I'd turn that down too. So at that point, you know, I was telling them like I wanted to be more active because they weren't keeping me active. And that's exactly what they did. Like they offered me the fights, and I was grateful for it, you know, but it was bad timing because I would have fought in April against Tony Johnson. And then they offered me a fight in May, and then they offered me a fight in August. They would offer me 3 fights in 4 months time. You know what I mean? And that's exactly what I wanted. So, you know, they accommodated me in that way, but unfortunately I wasn't able to compete because of injuries. So, hopefully this year's a little bit different. I fought in January. It was a little bit of a long leg off. They haven't been doing as much events and stuff, but they were trying to get me on the June card. Ended up being July. And, you know, 2 fights this year, hopefully another one at the end of the year. And, you know, finish this year 8-0.
I like it. I got to go back. I got to ask, you know, for me, these interviews are conversations. They're not, I've got 5 questions, then I'm out of here. But man, talk about turning away a 6-figure job. I know so many people try to get into the sport and understand the sport, more so try to understand the fighter from a pure fighter standpoint, or maybe truly from a pure Dalton standpoint. You got a 6-figure job staring at you in the face, but you know that this is what you love and this is what you want to do in your life. How does that kind of play out internally? And I mean, how big, I mean, obviously financially kind of a big risk, right? But how much did you believe in yourself to walk away from that and to get to where you are today?
You know, I was willing to go all in on myself. Everybody was telling me I was stupid. You know, it's too risky. It's not going to pay off. And like, whenever I told them like how much I was getting paid, they're like, yeah, you're an idiot. How are you going to live? Blah, blah, blah. You know, sponsors were helping me out a lot back then. But at the end of the day, you know, like you said, I was leaving a 6-figure job to get paid a guaranteed $4,000. I ended up only fighting twice that year. And so, I mean, I was broke, man. But at the end of the day, that's what I wanted to do. And the money never really mattered to me. You know, I want to be successful. I want to be like wealthy. At the end of the day, I want to have money, be able to do whatever I want, make a difference in people's lives around me. But that was, if that were the only goal, I would have stayed with Northwestern Mutual. You know what I mean? I truly love fighting, and I want to go down as one of the greatest to ever do it. You know what I mean? I want to be a world champion. I want to defend my belt multiple times. You know, I want to leave my mark and leave my name, write a legacy. And that's what it is for me at the end of the day. You know, I'll get the money later. And that was my mindset at the time. You know, I'm willing to bet on myself, take the pay cut now, where I'm going to end up making a lot more money later, and set myself up for a good retirement, and give myself a lot of opportunities after fighting as well that I otherwise wouldn't have if I would have stayed at Northwestern Mutual.
Well, in a very calm way. It's 8:15 in the morning where I live. If when the fighting career is over, if you want to get into like motivational speaking, even with just your calm voice, I think you'll be great at that. You got me ready to run through a wall right now. I absolutely love it. One thing I do love about a guy like yourself, Dalton, is that you're a guy who Bellator, and it's not just to blow smoke up you or Bellator, but it's the truth. I love when a promotion and a fighter can come together early on in their career, or maybe from the absolute beginning, like yourself, and you guys continue to rise up. We've kind of seen that. I would say the best example is probably AJ McKee. You know, he's a guy who has fought, you know, pretty much his entire career with Bellator, and look where he's at now. And both sides are reaping the benefits of that. Is that something you think about? Like, hey, they gave me the first shot. I'm going to rise through these rankings, and I'm going to become one of the biggest stars this promotion has ever seen.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I said, I'm grateful for the opportunity they gave me, so I'm willing to pay back pay it back. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, my goal is to be champion. So, currently I'm 7-0. I'm ranked number 6. I'm on my way there. And once I get the belt, I want to defend it a few times, write my name in Bellator's history. And then hopefully at that point, if we're doing cross promoting with the UFC, I'll just stay with Bellator. But I mean, there's going to be a time in my career where I have to go for legacy, and there's going to be the what ifs and the doubters saying, like, if he was in the UFC, he wouldn't do this or that. And I would, you know what I mean? I'd do the same thing in the UFC. So at that point, I might have to go over just to, cement my legacy and prove myself. But, I'm grateful for everything Bellator's done for me so far. So, I plan on paying it back and staying with them for a while.
I mean, we've seen cross promotion fights through pretty much everyone but the UFC. So many calls for it over the last couple of years. And I'm guessing this is a dumb question, but I'm guessing you're right in line with being one of those guys who is calling for them to kind of step up, be open to the idea, because there's a legitimate argument for multiple divisions on the Bellator side in comparison to the UFC side. Is that something you'd like to see happen in the future?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think right now, the 170-pound division and the 135-pound division can both compete in UFC, if not be better than UFC. You know what I mean? And that's including depth-wise. So you got guys in every weight class that could be the champ or be in top 5, whatever, in the UFC, in Bellator. But as a division as a whole, you know what I mean? Like 170 in Bellator is deep. 135 in Bellator is deep. You look at Kyoji Horiguchi, when he was in UFC, he only lost once. It was Demetrius Johnson. Demetrius Johnson's in ONE FC getting beat as well. People just don't, they're because the UFC is a marketing machine, they're willing to just believe everything that the UFC is putting out and believe that the UFC is like top tier. And don't get me wrong, it is. It has some of the best fighters in the world there, but it's not all of them. Bellator has some of them. PFL has some of them. ONE FC has some of them. And I think the day that they start cross promoting, as the days it'll be more like boxing, where people get super excited for the big super fights, the champion from Bellator fighting the champion from UFC, champion for PFL fighting either of those two, and then if those are the big 4, those are the 4 belts, kind of like WBO, WBC, so on and so forth. And I think that would be great for the sport, but obviously UFC has a lot to lose.
Yeah, of course. And I love the way you laid it out there, because you're absolutely right. I mean, there's so many matchups we can make right now, but we're not here for that. But after your fight at Bellator 283, after your win, I should say, you mentioned John Salter. I know you said you want to possibly get in another fight at the end of the year. What's next for you, Dalton? What do you truly want in your next fight?
I'd love to fight in October or November against John Salter. He's ranked number 4. He's a UFC vet himself. He fought for the title already. I think it would be a great test for myself. I truly believe that I can win that fight in dominant fashion, just like I did the last one. And I think it would be a big statement that I can make for the entire division and for the entire world, really. Kind of put a stamp on what I just did last Saturday.
It's interesting, right? And I love that you say that, because I guess my only question here is, what's more important, making a statement to the division and that you're a fight or 2 away from the belt, or sending a worldwide message about who you are as a fighter and your brand, and you'll eventually get the belt? Which one is more important in your next fight? A message to the division or a message to the world?
I think a message to the world, because sooner or later the division is going to find out regardless. And, I want the world to find out now.
I love it, man. Well, I hate to ever fanboy out, but I'm a huge fan of yours. I love the way you compete, and being able to talk to you for the first time. I'd obviously like to have you on before your next fight. You have a lifelong open invite to this show. I love the way you carry yourself. I love the way you go about fights, from a physical standpoint, skill set standpoint, and a mental standpoint. I think it can kind of really be an example for younger fighters throughout, and obviously older fighters to wake up if they're not following in your steps. But we were talking about it, so it'd be reminiscent of me to not ask. I know you said you're headed to Steelers training camp here. How you feeling about your team? I know you guys got my former quarterback, Mitch Trubisky, and I always love when I can talk to a fighter about something other than fighting. But you guys got a long storied history. How you feeling about your team this year?
So I went on Wednesday, and I got to see. I showed up 30 minutes late, so I got to see most of the practice. But from what I saw, man, Mitch Trubisky is the best quarterback there by far. Mason Rudolph was throwing picks. Kenny Pickett was throwing picks. And not just the fact that they're throwing picks, it's not good defensive plays. They were bad balls. And the ones that they weren't even throwing picks, they were bad balls. They were hitting the defender instead of the receiver, and the defender just wasn't intercepting them, or it was hitting them in their back. They didn't see it coming, So it seemed like the ball was in the air too long with Kenny Pickett. It didn't seem like he had enough zip on it. Mason Rudolph was being Mason Rudolph. And, Mitch Trubisky looked good. He looked really good. So I'm excited for that. I think he's going to be the starter, and I'm excited to see what he could bring to the team, because some of those receivers we brought in, Pickens and Calvin Austin, they looked phenomenal in practice, especially Calvin Austin. I'm very impressed with him, and I think he's going to be one of our biggest up and comers for sure. And we already got Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson, so I think we're going to be good this year.
No, I like it, man. Hey, listen, you could probably break down fights as good as you break down football. You got an analyst future, lined up for you. But I'll ask you this, and maybe you can relate it as a fighter, right? Because obviously the team around you is everything outside of your own skill set. A lot of people, first year without Big Ben, question marks here and there on defense. Obviously, you got Minkah Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt. I can't believe I'm talking pure football with a Bellator fighter right now. I love it. But when you have a guy like Mike Tomlin, and listen, we both are fans of historic franchises. Me, Chicago Bears, but in my city, we can't get over 1985. That's just a fact. But for you guys, when a legend like Big Ben walks away from the sport, but you still have an established culture because of your head coach and Mike Tomlin, maybe as a professional athlete, if you could speak to what it means to have that culture and to have that leadership in a head coach like a Mike Tomlin, and what it does for a team, for a professional athlete. What does a guy like Mike Tomlin do?
It's not just with football. I played football in college. I wrestled in college. Right now I'm an MMA fighter. But you really need a leader, and not just in the terms of one of your teammates, like a player. You need somebody that's gonna step up and go above and beyond, and can actually get players motivated and excited to play, and somebody that can keep, like you said about culture, like the culture isn't just winning. It's about being disciplined and doing the right things in the locker room, on and off the field. And he has high expectations of his players. Obviously Antonio Brown and LeVeon Bell aren't here anymore. A lot of people say that was their choice, but I think they were a little forced out by Mike Tomlin. They were being drama queens, and they were causing a lot of trouble. They were toxic to the locker room, and they're not here. And Antonio Brown was making comments about how he wanted to retire as Steeler, and Mike Tomlin was saying that's not happening. He's not coming back. I don't care how good he is. And, he's one of the greatest receivers in the league. And I still believe that even to this day, if he came back to the Steelers, he'd put up phenomenal numbers. And, Mike Tomlin doesn't want that. He cares more about his team as a whole rather than just winning. The culture is winning, but at the end of the day, he wants his team to, be disciplined. He wants them to do the right thing on and off the field. He wants it to be like a brotherhood, and I think that's very important in any sport. If you don't have that in an MMA gym, there's no organization and nobody leading you there, and there's no, structure, then I think it's just, going to go up in flames eventually. And fortunately, we have something like that at AT&T. We have a lot of structure. We have organization. We have a lot of good teammates around us. Everybody helps each other. And I think that's why you see us doing as well as we are.
Yeah, your team down there is absolutely incredible. And I love everything you just said. The last one here, I got to ask you, because you mentioned him. So it'd be dumb of me to not ask. It got canceled, but what do you make of LeVeon Bell truly pursuing a boxing career? I love that pro athletes and celebrities want to get into combat sports, but it's always boxing. You never see anybody just want to jump into an MMA fight, except Jake Paul, who apparently thinks he can fight anyone and everyone. But what do you make of pro athletes jumping into like the boxing world, and how do you think LeVeon would do?
Yeah, the thing with Jake Paul wrestled in high school, so he has a wrestling background. He can pick up on jiu-jitsu easily. He's been boxing forever. But LeVeon Bell, I haven't seen any of his boxing videos or anything recently, but a couple of years ago after he left the Steelers, I seen him boxing and hitting pads and everything. And, he was hyping himself up at the time and talking about how he could beat professional boxers. He wanted to play or fight professional boxers. And for what I seen at the time, at least on the pads, I didn't see him spar, but he was doing a lot of shit wrong. Technique wise, he looked stiff. He didn't look like he was a professional athlete. He didn't, like, if you didn't know who he was when he was hitting the pads, you wouldn't be able to tell he was an NFL running back. And I mean, that might have changed. A lot of times went by. I'm assuming he's still been doing it if he has a legitimate interest in it. But at that time, he didn't look very good. So let's hope he fixed it if that's what he wants to do. But I mean, that's a late start to a boxing career. And that's why a lot of people don't want to do MMA whenever they leave another sport, because you get a late start. And if you don't have a background in both, I mean, you're not going to be successful at all. You know, there's too much to learn.
Dalton, I think you have an incredible mind. I think you have an incredible mindset about life and just your career. Like I said, I'm not here to fanboy out. I have a ton of respect for you and all the things that you've already accomplished right outside the top five. I know that top five spot is probably warranted at this point. But I know that you're looking October, November, a fight with John Salter. And if you do what you expect to do, that top five, top three ranking is right there in reach for you, if not higher. So I thank you for the time and the opportunity. I would love to talk to you again before your next fight, and truly appreciate you making the time.
Yeah, thank you, bro. Let's set it up. I'd love to talk to you again.